Hey, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt this feeling of irrational jealousy when someone you know is doing good or just being happy, yet you are not? Does this feeling ring a bell for any of you too? Obviously, I'm not gonna go into specifics in here, and it was at this moment that the feeling of irrational jealousy really triggered in me. I did not show any emotions at that point. I just took the time to excuse myself from the place we were at. Went home and I broke down into tears after that. The feeling was a mix of the irrational jealousy I felt and the self-loathing due to the fact that I could not feel good for them. It was mostly the latter though. Regardless, let's leave this here for now. Have you ever felt the same or similar feeling? No, just me. Oh, I see some of you raising your hands. It's too few. I'm gonna give another example. We have all probably met that one person who was born into wealth. And usually these type of people will say the most ludicrous or luxurious things that to them sound completely normal, yet to people like me they sound like total insanity. Let me give you a small example. Oh, last time I went on a vacation, yeah, I went for a ski vacation in Switzerland for about a month. It was mediocre at best. Examples of this experience may vary, but regardless, we have all been there. And usually, the goodness of the character of the person saying it does not really bother us. We still feel this feeling of intense and irrational jealousy. Well, if you haven't read the title, you probably have guessed that this video is going to be about privilege. Whoop whoop. And before you say, I will be making a lot of check your privilege jokes, you have been warned. Having eased you in, I shall be welcoming you, my loyal subjects. It's me, your Archduchess Emily. Before I go into more detail about this feeling that we have all felt, let's have a little look at what even is privilege. The way I see it, privilege is any advantage a person or a group of people might have that are a side product of something else. In most cases, it's wealth, yet not exclusively. These advantages typically do not really have the appearance of advantages, due to the fact that people growing up with them simply see them as normal. So normal in fact that when you have certain privileges, especially when they are common in the group that you're in, it would be hard for one to identify them as such. Ergo, recently in Amsterdam I think, it was promised that there would be a drastic reduction in cars by simply reducing the amount of parking space inside of the city. To me, a street urchin, this sounds pretty good. Cars are so noisy and they take so much space in a city. And unlike the backwater place that I live in, so usually this feeling of jealousy that I sometimes feel, it's followed by, come on Amelie, grow up. You know so many people who are even less privileged and got it way off worse than you. And I do know that my situation is probably worse than most, yet better also than most. It really depends on the situation and the person we're talking about. I have the luck and misfortune of having a Bulgarian passport, for example. It's a massive privilege due to being part of the EU, a place that is one of the best places to be born when compared to the rest of the world. They tend to be no wars, with a few possible exceptions, but that's not in the EU, so we don't count it. But then again, this is a comparison to places that are essentially outside of the EU. When comparing to other EU states, then you see the massive misfortune. Essentially, it's the second most corrupt country in the EU, right after Hungary, of course. Not being part of Schengen, which kinda sucks. Having quite the abysmal healthcare system when compared to other EU states, especially when it comes to psychological issues. So, a quick edit here. This video is essentially mostly an emotional view on how I would view privilege and not really that political, or at least as political as I would like it to be. So for now I'm gonna leave it as is due to the fact that I want to praise the algorithm, so I need to post something on Friday. But I would like to look back at it and check in again and actually analyze privilege and the systems that lead to it, and obviously oppression, because they're all interlinked. So having check your privilege, my own privilege that is, or at least what little there is to check, you can probably view it one or two ways. The first way, you can feel that I am less privileged than you, and the other way is that I'm more privileged than you. Simple as. And that's absolutely correct. Whichever way you view it, it's probably true because I don't know your privilege and you can feel it. You can probably guess. You know, I'm also very poor, if that helps. Hmm, somehow I feel like I'm forgetting something, aren't I? Oh yeah, people who are ignorant of this pyramid of privilege. How could I have possibly forgotten? So, typically, or at least according to the idiot recording the script, they don't know what they have or don't want to know simply due to the lack of interaction with more or with less privileged people than them. Or maybe it just doesn't affect them the same way it affects me. Who knows? So people who don't really know where they are on this scale or pyramid of privileges, let's say, really end up bothering me. Either they're sitting somewhere above me and being all casual about all the easiness of life they have, which is so infuriating, or either they're below me but simply content with their life and don't want to take the power they should probably deserve too. In the latter, I feel more sad than infuriated, to be honest, but still, you understand the gist of it. Yeah, some people are just in their ivory towers and having a blast, meanwhile having never looked outside the windows to see how the plebs are doing. That's enraging to me. Or, and this applies mostly to the extremely rich, pretending to care and to acknowledge their privilege and positions of power by simply funding their vanity project. Oh yeah, I am calling you out, Billy Goat Gates. Because if you really care about malaria killing so many people, you would first invest in nets and medicine for it. Yet, you don't care for the people who are literally dying. You only care about your legacy of simply patenting the cure. And since most people who care will simply see your contribution and think, well, that has been dealt with, and move on with their own lives, while on the ground there is no nets and medicine for the people who are literally dying, I say again for a third time, I think, that could be saving lives right now. Instead, you just care about your legacy. And that fucking is annoying. Sorry about that little rant. I will pretend it never happened. Carry on. The ignorant people on top of the ladder will fight tooth and nail to keep their privileges, not by wanting equality but trying to make their privileges exclusive. In heavy quotations here, mostly because they're scared of losing their special status. For these sort of examples, we can always have a look at male privilege, white privilege, cis privilege even. These are three types of groups of people who simply have more privilege and more power than others, of similar groupings, of course. And yet, a majority of those groups do not really want to acknowledge their privilege compared to other groups, since acknowledgements of those privileges would necessitate some change. These privileges are simply refused to be acknowledged, even though the stats don't lie. But when people are in denial, there's nothing you can do about it, really, can you now? So by default there is the exclusion of other groups from having the same head start as them, either due to fear of losing what they already have, or maybe they simply do not want to acknowledge that the game might be rigged to begin with. So that will hurt them, by making them less virtuous, of course. And of course, there is the sad reality of people who simply want to deny people in their own group some privileges that they simply did not have when they needed them the most. So now they have to make it everybody else's problem as well. Look no further than trans medicalist trans people. I can acknowledge the hardships and suffering these people have endured in their transition, of course, but this does not excuse them actively seeking out to make transition for younger people more difficult just because they suffered or were indoctrinated by the propaganda their own doctors were telling them. Or maybe it's the fact that they feel more validated due to their suffering. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. So, I don't care mostly because the outcome is the same. I see them advocating for transmedicalism, therefore excluding plenty of people who will need this healthcare just because they had to suffer. And I really am sorry for what you had to go through, but imposing your own pain on others, it's plain selfish and cruel. You should be better than that. Yet, for some reason, you choose not to be. I'm moving on and I don't have a transition, so beep. But babes, suffering is universal. So why not make it less of it at the end of the day? Just a crazy idea I have, I know. Having seen and lived what I have, I can say that I'm very grateful for what I have. Yet also, I'm very much miserable and not satisfied. And god damn it, I will complain about it. As should you. Just make sure your actions actually improve your and the life of others, rather than simply having a hateful spiral that simply deteriorates everything. What I mean is that we tend to really acknowledge those differences to people who are similar to us, let's say, but have a slight advantage or disadvantage. We feel this jealousy, or either because we feel that they're doing better than us, even though they have it worse, or we simply have this jealousy and envy because they have it slightly better than us. But feelings are neutral. It's how we deal with them, it's how we express them. That's what really matters. And by not... Check your privilege! Okay, this was the last one, I promise. Maybe by this knowledge you can deal with it next time in a more healthy and productive way for all parties involved. Because at the end of the day, we really should work together. By working together, we can strive to get privileges for everyone and rights for everyone, equally. People with more privilege should be trying to help others who are less privileged in any way possible. I have done it and I have very little privilege, so you can also do it. Maybe it's just a conversation, but it's something. Something is always more than nothing. When I'm talking with somebody who I feel they have less privilege than I do, usually I try to take a back seat and really listen to them so I can show them affection and care in an effective way. And I never, ever take pity on them. On the other hand, all of my friends along the years have really helped me through some shit, like just by having conversation or being there for me or maybe buying me a beer once in a while. Like, even those tiny little things, they really do matter. And I cannot explain how grateful I feel to have met so many great people in my life. But sadly, for a vast majority of people, what comes easier and natural is to simply look at themselves and no one else. Looking back at the car people from earlier, and also the vast majority of people who don't seem to care what they have, many don't. The ones who have simply want to exclude others instead of being open to the possibility of everybody having the benefits. Eventually will just make them an unnecessary antagonist. And this antagonism simply plays into the game that the system is created around. We end up divided for the little and minor inconveniences, and the ones who would gain to actually lose something, like the billionaires maybe, they get to be safe in their ivory towers, not even looking at what we the plebs be doing. So competition among the lower classes continues. Did I say classes? Oh no!
You get into your shitty car and you see a rich CEO who works half as hard as you do drive down the street in his Porsche. Class 4.
Okay, this time is actually the last time. This time, guarantee, no more Helsinger Bridge references. To conclude, I'm going to tell you to simply know the difference between equality and oppression. Because what is equality? If it feels like oppression to you, then we have a problem. And also vice versa. If oppression feels like equality to you, then we have a problem. After you have done that, well, try to support yourself through the struggle you're going through, and don't forget there's others like you, and whenever you can, and if possible, lend a helping hand. You're gonna feel great about it. And when you feel the jealousy that sometimes we feel, deal with it in a healthy way. Just that. If you recall in the beginning of the video, I did bring up an event that essentially I was crying and broke down due to feeling this sort of jealousy and feeling bad about me feeling this sort of jealousy. After taking the time I needed to process it, I went and apologized to that person who I felt jealous of, even though I had not given any indication that I had been disturbed or anything of the sorts. I just felt super bad for not being happy for them, that's all. It was very important for me not to be hurtful towards them because I acknowledge the struggle that they are going through also, and the moment of joy they had at the end of the day really made me happy, even though it kind of triggered all this jealousy and thinking about why am I not rich or simply having been born in a place where life would be easier. But to be honest, life's never easier. Even if somebody has a little bit more from you, they're still struggling, it's still hard for them. We're all in the same boat, except billionaires. We should eat them. So essentially what I was trying to say all this video is that we should be nice to each other when essentially we're similar situations. But once you get $1 billion, we really should chop you up into pieces, boil you into a stew, and eat you. Yes, this is the essence of this video. I like it. And I'm pretty sure that was it. You can do all the things the algorithm likes. I would really love you if you did that, like liking, commenting, subscribing. Notice my senpai algorithm, please. I want to escape the current hell I'm currently in. Okay, bye.